Kim and Debbie for your step information. Both of you hit things that I'd like to talk about just a little bit, but and maybe I will. But before I get to that, I'm glad that you're here. This is Saturday Night Live, and it's about recovery. It's recovery from whatever's going on in your life. Even that thing that's going on in your life that you have totally blocked out and it's pushing you around, kind of like what you're saying. And then somewhere down you get better, and then you realize, man, this has been pushing me around all this time. Isn't that true, Kim? And so and just realizing that we everybody say we are fellow strugglers. Okay? Because we're dealing with stuff. All kinds of stuff, different stuff, and maybe multiple type stuff. Sometimes in my head I see myself like I can't juggle, but I see myself juggling. You know what I'm talking about? Juggling stuff and not doing a very good job of it, but trying, I think I'm supposed to be able to, but somehow I'm not making it. That's, in a sense, kind of what you were talking about. But you hit such a good note there, I got to go back to it, okay? Because on step 7, it said that we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. And then the sentence, or I'm going to read just part of the sentence that you read earlier, off of page 60 out of the Life Recovery Workbook, says, we must now also let go. Everybody say let go. We say we want to let go, but we struggle with letting go. Should I say that again? We want to let go, but we struggle with letting go because I think one of the main reasons why, Angie, this kind of goes to some of what you're saying. One of the reasons why is because we've always done it this way before. And I think it's supposed to work, so I keep trying to do it, even though it never did.
We think it works.
Well, no, we believe that it should work. Because that's the only thing we know. Well, as I said, we maybe modeled it from other people in our life, some of our family of orientation or whatever, and so, well, they did it, so I need to do it too. We don't recognize that I need to do it. We just do it because that's all we know. Does that make sense? So let's go back. We must now, we're talking about letting, step 7, we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. So we must now also let go. Everybody say let go. Of the spiritual deadly traits. Spiritually deadly traits. May I ask you a question? I'm going to anyway, but I'm going to ask permission. Are you holding on to some spiritually deadly traits? Those are, I'm going to read you a quote. How about that? I have this on the the sheet that we're going to work on later. And this is from, anybody familiar with Marcus Aurelius? Yeah. Marcus Aurelius said this. He says, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Was that too much for you? No. And so to explain that statement of the letting go of the spiritually deadly traits, we all know intuitively, even though oftentimes we try to rationally excuse ourselves from stuff, like because we've always done that way, that it is damaging our soul. It's costing us every time we go down that road. Do you know what I'm talking about? And it's like we all say we know we need to stop doing this, but I'm going to give myself permission to do it one more time. Right? Just one more time, this time, and then I'm going to make a change tomorrow, but today is okay. And because it's a deadly trait, what do you think that does to you? Seth?
Well, let's go to my favorite Marcus Aurelius quote.
Okay.
Stop wasting time debating what a good person is and start being one.
There you go. I like that one. Yeah. And so these deadly traits, and we know what they are, and you say, well, I know what theirs are, but I don't know what mine is. Right? Right? Yeah. And the fact of it is, we have legitimate excuses, and an excuse means that it's not really a healthy reason. It's just a good excuse. Okay. But we have excuses why we hold on to whatever it is that we're holding on to, because we want it, or we believed it'll work, or they say it'll work, or that's all I know, or it's always been that way. I can't change because I can't do anything different. Anybody recognize any of those statements? Those are all lies, by the way, that we tell ourselves, in case you didn't know. And so to finish up the sentence here, says the spiritually deadly traits that we keep us from being who we really are. And that goes right down the line of what we've been talking about for the last several weeks about the best version of ourselves. Okay? And how do we become? I'm just going to jump off this little springboard right here. One of the ways that we become the best version of ourselves is to recognize we're holding on to deadly traits. You know what? And that's true. And we can always use that as a way to go ahead and hold on to the ones we do know. Because we say, well, I don't know everything, so I'm not going to do anything. Did you hear that one?
How's that work out for you?
Since I can't do everything, I'm not going to do anything.
That doesn't work too good either.
You're looking at me with, like, yeah. So, anyway, and that's the way, see, now, I'm going to say this, that our brain wants to maintain what it knows, even though it's sick and maybe destructive. Does that make sense? Our brain wants to stay there. And when you decide, and do you have a right to decide?
Yes.
Okay. I believe correct. But you also have a right, God-given right, and that when we have a right to decide that we want to make a change, we want to do something healthier, but our brain automatically goes to work not for us, but against us. Part of it. Not all of it, but part of it. Because it wants to maintain what it knows, because that is what we'd call its comfort zone. Even though it may be killing you, your brain says it's comfort. So what actually, if you remember some of the information I taught on urge surfing, do you remember that? Any of that urge surfing? Some of the information in the urge surfing says that your brain will literally torture you and cause you pain, even more pain, to try to get you to continue with the deadly behavior or destructive behavior or unhealthy behavior. So, if we were to recognize that and say, wait a minute, I'm not going to go with it. Okay? I wonder if urges is a part of that. Just a question. Any thoughts from anybody? Urges, you know what I mean? I think it could be. And, they say that urges only last 15 to 20, 25 minutes. Because if you don't if you don't feed the urge, it'll dissipate. But the trouble is, we like to keep feeding that urge. Yeah. So, anyway, that was, I wanted to touch on that. And I want to go to something that Debbie said out of where she was talking out of the step guide about God hearing you, which is true. But sometimes when you read scriptures, it's kind of like, I believe it for everybody else, but not for me. Is that the truth? Yeah. Let me ask you maybe a unorthodox question that I've never done something like this before. Sarcasm. Would God hear you cuss? How many would say yes? Would God hear you cuss if you cussed? How many would say yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if he would hear you when you cussed or cursed, how you want to call it, then why wouldn't he hear you pray? Have you ever thought about that? Somehow we believe more in that he'll hear me cussing than he would me praying. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And again, that has to do with our thinking. Our stinking thinking, if you don't mind that terminology. Well, later on tonight, we're going to talk more about how to become the best version of yourself. But I want to end up my time here tonight with a. Actually, it is a part of how it's not on the sheet, but I wanted to add it to, so I'm just adding it to my thoughts, and that is this. This is one way that you can become the best version of yourself. Are you interested? All right? Do the right thing. Whatever is the right thing, you do it. If you do the right thing, then it's the right thing, right? And then you feel good that you've done the right thing. When you do the wrong thing, how do you feel about yourself? Yeah. So you're really helping yourself when you do the right thing, because you're then actually making yourself feel better. You have more personal integrity. And so, and the rest of that is, how many are familiar with the Newton's third law of motion? What is it, Alvin?
What is put in motion stays in motion.
Well, actually, it's similar to that, yes. That